Who is the most underrated actor of all time?
It's Dolph Lundgren.
Correct. Why?
Well, because of his spiky hair, and his ice-cold demeanor, and his big muscles.
Absolutely.
I must break you.
The guilty will be punished. My name is Sergeant Andrew Scott.
Come on, guys, don't do this. If I don't get breakfast, I get real grumpy. I don't think you like me grumpy.
And you go in pieces, asshole.
Let's kick some ass.
Hello and welcome back to I Must Break This Podcast, the fan podcast looking at the cinematic career of action legend Dolph Lundgren. Today we're going back to 2015 and looking at the silly shark thriller Shark Lake. In this bizarre combination of horror, action, and child custody drama, Dolph plays Clint Grey, a smuggler of exotic animals who must contend with the bloodthirsty bull shark that he set loose in a Nevada lake 5 years earlier. Yet in addition to stopping the shark from eating more locals, Clint is to also evade the mob boss that is on his tail and reconnect with the daughter he left behind.
I have a great idea. When we're in the water.
Who was that?
What was what?
A bear went into the lake and killed somebody.
Your killer's definitely not a bear.
Who's ever heard of a shark in a lake?
It will live and thrive until somebody kills it.
What about Clint Grey? 2005 to 2010, trafficking of illegal animals. Wolves, pythons. A damn tiger.
We had a deal. When I buy something, I expect to get it.
I think 5 years ago, he put this shark in the lake.
You are gonna give me my shark. She's cute.
You judge her. I kill everyone you know.
I'm gonna end this.
Get out of the water! Get him out now! It's a coordinated attack.
What do you mean?
She was pregnant when she went into the lake. They're just doing what evolution programmed them to do.
Shh. Did you hear that?
They're surviving. We pretend that it's not nature.
I'm your host, Sean, and joining me today to discuss this one is Kevin Dotson, host of the 6 Degrees of Schwarzenegger podcast. Kevin, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me.
Sean, nice to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been wanting you on for a while. I mean, you and I, we were kicking around quite a few titles actually when we first got in touch with one another. And before we really start discussing this title and why you chose this one, I have to say, I love your show. Okay, I've listened to quite a few episodes. I love it's you and John, your buddy John, who hosts 6 Degrees of Schwarzenegger. Is that right?
That's right. You called me a host, but you can call me co-host because it's John and mine, our baby.
Okay, and if I understand correctly, I don't want to step on your toes or anything like that, but if I understand correctly, you guys take an action movie from the glory days of action cinema. So I guess we can say from 1983 to about 98 or so. Is that kind of your sweet spot? and then what you do is it's pretty much not just one movie, a singular episode. You guys will pretty much do 4 or 5 episodes where you really pick the film apart. Is that right?
Yeah, it's pretty obsessive. We just to rein ourselves in, we sort of said we'd focus on like the golden age of action movies and the golden age of Arnold Schwarzenegger, which was like whatever Conan through I don't know, or we said we'd never do anything past 97 because that's when Batman and Robin came out. We said, well, that was sort of the end of Arnold's reign on top of the action movie heap. But yeah, we focus heavily on Arnold Schwarzenegger, but then we also just look at any other action movie that we sort of have fond memories of from growing up from that era. And yeah, like you said, we really obsess about it to the point that hopefully it's funny. We like to look at the good and the bad in the movies and just look at it through the lens of a couple of 40-year-old dudes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as of this recording, you guys are currently releasing Cyborg, which I mean, I'll be the first one to admit. I mean, Cyborg, it's not my favorite Van Damme film. I don't think it's actually anyone's a favorite Van Damme film. But what's interesting about it is I remember seeing that one as a kid, and it, to be perfectly honest, it scared the shit out of me as a kid, because I would say out of all of Van Damme's movies, that one has to be just the most, the meanest, the nastiest, the most mean-spirited. I mean, it is absolutely just gross in so many ways. I mean, for an action movie, I mean, I think that's certainly saying something, but that one is just, man, it is, it's its own animal, I think we can say.
Yeah, absolutely. It was dark. So that was one I was not as familiar with. Sometimes we'll switch off picking a movie that one of or the other of us was very familiar with and might be a blind spot, for the other guy. And this one was more of a blind spot for me because I was a big Van Damme guy, but it was sort of forbidden from watching Cyborg, like you said, because I think it was one of the darker movies that he ever did, certainly.
Well, before we get into this film, I know that when you and I were chatting, we kind of had the idea of let's partake in a couple beverages to kind of get through the film. Considering this film, there are quite a few things that we can say about it, but to get through it, we each have our own respective beverage. I'm going to be perfectly honest right now, Kevin. I did not have time to make it to the store. We had the idea where we were each going to do a lunch. Which I mean perfectly suits this film wonderfully. Unfortunately, I was not able to. However, I do have this is a beer from Iceland. It's an Icelandic beer, and it is called Thule. So I'm cracking it open now. What do you have? Were you able to snag a land shark?
I did find land shark, and I was alarmed to realize that it's a Margaritaville product. So I'm putting money into Jimmy Buffett's pocket right now, but I am going to crack open a land shark to talk about this shark movie.
Right on. Well, thank you so much. I have to ask, as I ask all the guests who come on, I'm curious because I know on 6 Degrees of Schwarzenegger, your respective podcast, you guys have discussed Mr. Dolph Lundgren in some respects, some fashions, but I'm curious. What are your thoughts on the Big Swede, as many like to refer to him? What films of his have you liked, and I guess where does he compare and stack up for you compared to the other action guys of the era?
I like him. I think he's underrated. I think as far as like being a charismatic actor, he's probably about as good as any of those big action movie guys. I'll be honest, I only probably watched like his more mainstream movies. I was making a list before we started this of what all I had seen. So obviously like Rocky IV, Masters of the Universe. I loved him in Universal Soldier, seen some of the Expendable movies that he was in. And I really liked his Punisher movie, although I haven't seen it in a long time. I just remember really liking it when I was like a teen. And then more recently, I think we were talking about Creed 2 and how I thought he was like the saving grace of that movie. He was just excellent. Like he can turn in a solid acting performance, I know that when
we were kicking around the film that we wanted to discuss and cover, I think it's fair to say you really haven't seen too much of his direct-to-video work from the past 10 to 15 years. Is that fair to say?
That's very fair. The only title that really jumped out at me as a Schwarzenegger guy was Kindergarten Cop 2, just because there's obviously a Schwarzenegger connection there. But it sounds like you had already maybe done that one, or you've got it on the horizon. So yeah, I was game to watch whatever, because I like sort of a bad movie as much as the next guy, I suppose.
Well, and boy, oh boy, do we have a bad movie to discuss? Yeah, this is Shark Lake. I just, before we go further, I just want to read the plot synopsis for this film that is on Amazon. So we should probably say that this film is it's available on just about every free streaming service around. Okay, Amazon Prime, or excuse me, Freevee. That's the free version of Prime. So it's on Freevee, it's on Tubi, it's on YouTube, it's on Hoopla. I mean, it is on them all. Okay, but if you go on Amazon, on the Amazon Freevee interface, okay, here's the plot synopsis there. It states, action legend Dolph Lundgren goes head-to-head with a bloodthirsty shark that has a resort town under siege. As bodies wash up on the lake's shore, an ex-con, played by Lundgren, must take matters into his own hands to protect his daughter. Now, that right there, I think, is a killer premise, okay? Pun intended, of course. But I think that is just, that's an awesome premise, okay? And I'm not saying that that's an award-winning premise or anything like that, but when you hear that, okay, Dolph Lundgren going head-to-head with a shark, that sounds so cool, but man, is this film boring when you hear that premise.
I won't argue with you. I was shocked. You hear that premise and you're like, well, this is, if nothing else, this is going to just be a lot of fun. And there was really no sense of fun or joy to the movie that I could detect.
So is that why, I mean, I have to ask, is that why you chose this particular film? Because, I mean, I'll admit, you know, right off the bat, okay, I realized that maybe the pickings were pretty slim in the films that I gave you. But I know Shark Lake was one that you singled out. You said, yeah, let's do this one. Was it the fact that, I mean, are you a fan of shark movies, or did you know from the premise that it was going to be silly and that you were going to have fun with it? Why did you gravitate and choose this one?
I think, like you said, I think it sounded like from the title, you know what you're going to get, a shark in a lake, and how can that not be a fun time? You know, if nothing else. And I'd like to watch Dolph, punch a shark in the face as much as anyone else in the world.
Yeah. Well, it seems, I have a theory about this film, and I don't know if you would agree with this or not, but it seems like the entire movie, okay, the entire conceit of the movie was pretty much predicated on the idea of, hey, wouldn't it be wild if there was a shark in Lake Tahoe? I think that's pretty much how this film was written, and it was how it originated is, someone was sitting back, a screenwriter, whatever it may be. And I do have a little bit of backstory on the people who made this film, but I can't help but wonder if that was the conceit, if that was the idea of someone went to Lake Tahoe on vacation and they thought to themselves, man, it would be crazy as hell if there was a shark in this lake. And then somehow, as the film was inching closer to production, it was discovered that Dolph Lundgren was available for about 3 days, so they squeezed him in and shoehorned in a role for him, even though he is not necessary nor integral to the plot whatsoever. I mean, I'll just address the big elephant in the room right now. I don't know if you felt the same way or not, but it's not fair to call this a Dolph Lundgren movie when he's barely in it. I did something, as I was watching this, Kevin, I did something that I've never done before in a film-going experience, but I had a stopwatch as I was watching it, and I would set the stopwatch every time Dolph was on screen. Okay, and some of the reviews, if you go online, some of the reviews say, "Oh, he's barely in the film 5 minutes, 10 minutes." That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but he's in this movie. I according to my stopwatch, about 21 minutes, and that is
okay.
It in this 85-minute movie. Yet, it is being sold with him as the lead. He gets top billing. His face is front and center on the cover. Okay, he is one of the producers on the film. So for all intents and purposes, it's being sold that this is his movie when he's basically a cameo that doesn't add anything to the plot. Did you feel the same?
I did. I mean, I'll admit I'm sort of new to this world of like the direct-to-video action stuff, especially that little niche of the over-the-hill guys doing it. So I feel like I've come to understand that maybe it's more common than I realized. But yes, I thought when I was signing up, I assumed I would, get more Dolph Lundgren mileage than I actually got in this movie. And yes, as you said, I mean, his character in the very final act, it adds something to the movie, but up until the final act, like he's sort of inconsequential to anything that's happening on screen.
Well, I'm curious. Have you been to Lake Tahoe? I have not. So, I mean,
I have been, and it's one of the most beautiful, like incredible places in the world. That's why I was sort of thrown watching the movie at just the casual cutting back and forth from Lake Tahoe to whatever lake in Mississippi that they filmed the bulk of the movie on. You have some shots with the beautiful pine trees and mountains in the background, and then you'll cut to the generic any lake in the Southeast, which is where I'm from. So when I was watching the beginning of the film, I was like, oh, this looks like another Georgia production, which is my home base. And then, then they'd cut to a shot of Lake Tahoe and then back to some flat lake in the Southeast. And it was just, to me, jarring visually because, Lake Tahoe is like being on another beautiful planet. And most of the movie was not Lake Tahoe.
It was not that. Well, I mean, because they never come right out and say that it is Lake Tahoe, but they did say
Nevada at some point, right? Like, did they? Exactly. Or am I just making that part up too?
No, they do a couple things. They drop a couple hints to kind of, fool you into thinking that it's Lake Tahoe, but in reality, it's a small town and lake. Okay, they never explicitly say that it's Lake Tahoe, but they do drop that it is Nevada, and they do comment that the lake is approximately 200 square miles. And if you look it up online, Lake Tahoe is approximately 200 square miles. So, I mean, nice. For all intents and purposes, this is trying to be Lake Tahoe. You said a couple things there that I want to go back to with regard to the aging action stars and the model that these direct-to-video films are now being sold on. And I mean, I've said this on the show numerous times, so I'm not going to go into detail on it too much, at length like I have done. But what's interesting is, the state of the current state of independent direct-to-video action cinema. This is what we have, where basically these aging action stars, are now they're essentially commodities. Okay, that can be bought for these low rent productions for a few days worth of work, and then the products are then sold overseas for a profit. Who exactly are buying these films? I really don't know. However, I mean, Dolph's name still has enough power and enough cachet to get movies made. But what's interesting is, are you familiar with the website Cameo? I'm sure you know Cameo.
Oh,
right?
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so this film is pretty much the cinematic equivalent of Cameo. If you go on Cameo and you pay the $350, that is Dolph's, that's his price tag. Okay, if you pay $350, then you can get anywhere from a 10-second to 30-second birthday message or good luck on your upcoming job interview kind of message from Dolph. Okay, it's the same kind of thing as going to a convention. Okay, going to a convention and paying the $50 to $80 for a photo op with Dolph, which is something I've actually done myself. So nice. I feel like that's what this film is doing, though. I mean, this film is just, my goodness, it is so low rent and so low budget. And then you watch it, and it's very clear. I mean, you can tell Dolph doesn't want to be here. You can tell that he's not invested, that this is not really his thing. But it almost feels like it was, hey, they met his price tag for 3 days worth of work, and so he showed up.
That sounds about right to me. Like, I was wondering, and I thought you'd have more insight, and it seems like you do, as to this world where, like, the business model that makes a movie like this profitable, and like how do they pick this particular script off the pile of scripts they must have, and I started wondering if maybe like something like this movie, this certain type of plot, certain type of writing caters to a certain market of maybe like English is not the primary language audience. So we just make a film that may as well be almost a silent film, like it's not too convoluted, and just the most simple premise you can come up with, and the most simple dialogue that you can come up with as well, because our audience is not that discerning about good writing or any other aspect of, what we would call, I guess, quality filmmaking.
Oh, I mean, most definitely. I mean, look, I said it already, and I'm probably going to say it a couple times again, okay? I mean, Dolph's character in this film is not necessary to the plot whatsoever. I mean, you can take his character. I mean, what it honestly feels like to me is, like you said, they had a pile of scripts, okay? They figured, okay, hey, shark movies are in. Sharks are in right now. Let's do something with that. And then they said at the last minute, right before it went into production, they realized, hey, wait a minute, we can get Dolph. Dolph is a name. We can sell this thing. Let's do it. And they were like, oh, man, let's write a character for Dolph, and we'll make him a deadbeat father who's going to leave his daughter behind, which was a really weird scene right there.
Absolutely.
I would honestly say, let's be honest. If it wasn't for Dolph, there's no way I would have watched this film. But on the other hand, if you took his character out of this film, I think the narrative would actually play maybe even a little bit better than what we see.
Well, I mean, I kept trying to draw lines, as I feel like the screenwriters and everyone else involved did as well, like between this and Jaws, the go-to shark movie out there. And if this movie was a knockoff of Jaws, then I guess Dolph is like the Quint character. And then you've got, the police officer, the marine biologist, and the old grizzled animal hunter. And they're going to battle these sharks.
And shamelessly, I feel kind of bad admitting this, but one of my previous episodes was the film Legendary, okay, where Dolph teamed up with Scott Adkins, and they are taking on a mythical, like, lizard beast monster. I feel like this film and that film probably would have made a good pairing. Maybe I should have done a combo episode of the two. I don't know.
No, they all deserve their own unique episode, I'm sure.
Well, the credited writers for this film really don't have any other credits to their name. This is pretty much their only gig, I guess we can say. And the director of this film is a gentleman by the name of Jerry Dugan. Okay, this is his first feature-length film. If you look at his background of other films, he actually came from a snowboarding background, where he shot and produced multiple films about snowboarding. And so if I am going to give the film some merit, I guess, okay, I will say the one thing that this film has that I really appreciated is there are some absolutely beautiful aerial shots of the Nevada locale. And so you look at this film, and yes, let's face it, it's cheaply made. I mean, the scenes where they're in the police station, I mean, you can tell that's clearly a set. I mean, it looks like a very cheaply made set. And so you watch this film and you see those aerial shots and you're like, well, okay, that's stock footage. But no, I mean, it appears that they sprung for these shots. And I wonder, considering Dugan's background in the world of, filming snowboarding and stuff like that, I think that he probably had access to drone equipment and whatnot, considering that background. And so he was able to just say, okay, you know what? Hey, I'm going to use that. And so I will say that is one small merit the film has, is just those aerial shots where it's like going over the trees and you see all the alpine trees and Lake Tahoe and everything. I think it looks absolutely beautiful, and it almost kind of fools you into thinking like, wow, maybe this film had more scale than we're giving it credit for.
Well, I looked him up as well on IMDb just to try to figure out who this guy is, and I saw he had a couple of credits that were interesting as the aerial director of photography on the movie Chips, which was like a remake, of the TV show, but in, a theatrical release. And then he was the aerial director of photography on the movie The Circle, which was a Tom Hanks movie that I never saw. But I see that his, apparently Hollywood respects his ability to shoot aerial stuff. So that speaks to what you were just saying.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, look, okay, again, on the cover of this film, you have a large picture of Mr. Dolph Lundgren. His name gets top billing, but he's barely in the film. I clocked it. It's about 21 minutes. Okay. The main character of the film is the actress's name is Sarah Malakul Lane. Okay. She plays the character of Meredith Hernandez, where she is she's not the sheriff of the town. She's the sheriff's deputy of the town. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay, yeah. And so she becomes the surrogate mother figure for Dolph's daughter that he left behind, okay? The film opens where Dolph's character, his name is Clint, his house is being raided by Hernandez and the sheriff. Why they're even there searching is really never made clear. They go in and they're, it's at nighttime and they're flashing their flashlights and everything, and they find numerous snakes and assorted animals in Clint's house. But then Clint quickly runs out of the house to evade the police, but then he is caught. And like I said earlier, he leaves his daughter behind, which doesn't really make him the most endearing character. But what this does is this allows Meredith, she adopts Dolph's daughter, and she pretty much, like I said, assumes the motherly role. And what this also does is this puts her at odds with Dolph's character, Clint, because she views him as nothing more than a prison parolee who abandoned his daughter. In fact, if we wanted to, we could take a drink, okay? Every scene that she's in, just about every scene that she's in, are her storming into her boss's office and bitching at him about how Clint is being released from prison and that he is not to see his daughter. Take a drink every time she starts bitching to the sheriff about how Clint has been paroled and she's worried that he wants to see his daughter.
Well, what's funny to me was like she cared nothing about the rule of law, when it came to that little young Carly's custody, because it was all about like, I don't want him to have a shot at seeing his daughter ever again. I mean, she had it out for him, I guess, but you could argue she's got a point. As you said, he rode off and abandoned her. That the whole opening, that was just an odd open to the movie. But to your point, if the idea of adding Dolph in was like sort of an afterthought, maybe that opening was not the original open to the film at all. But she's got it out for Clint Grey. She wants Carly to herself, and she does not care what family court and the law says about who should have custody.
And I mean, I will say about Sarah Lane, I mean, you can tell, okay, when she's on screen, she is trying extremely hard with what she's been given. Okay, I mean, she's not the best actress, but it's very obvious, I think, that she is taking this film and this role seriously. But in the end, like you said, her character just comes off as just obnoxious and annoying. It's like, okay, on one hand, I see where you're coming from, but in the end, like, he's still her father, you know what I mean? Like, he's still allowed to, maybe make amends or try and make up for what he did.
Yeah, there's some stuff that I'm sure we'll get to as we work our way through the plot, but she does some things that are just completely unreasonable as the film unfolds.
So after these opening scenes, okay, the film picks up 5 years later, where Clint is out of prison and trying to rebuild his life. I will say, in my opinion, again, I'm a little biased, as a Dolph Lundgren fan, there's really only one cool scene, and this is at Clint's house, okay, when he comes back. And again, this is one of those moments, like we keep saying, where I feel like this is one of those scenes that was kind of written in, that was kind of shoehorned in, because it doesn't really gel with the rest of the movie, because at the heart of this film, it's a shark movie, okay? It's a wannabe horror thriller shark movie. But then suddenly we get this scene at Clint's house where it becomes kind of a pseudo action movie in a weird way. So I guess if we can back up a bit here, okay? So apparently prior to his stint in prison, Clint was tasked with smuggling the bull shark for a mob boss, okay? And so in that opening scene, when we see Dolph driving away from the police, right as he gets to the lake, he ditches the shark into the lake, okay? And so
did he drive into the lake? I'm sorry, did you think he drove into the lake on purpose, or did he just accidentally run off the road and the shark got loose?
Oh, that's a good point. Because I guess that goes to the end. I couldn't
tell.
Actually.
I thought he almost ran into another car and then he crashed in the lake. I figured it was an accident, but the rest of the movie treats it as if he did this intentionally. So I was just unsure.
Well, now you got me. Oh goodness, Kevin! Now you got me wondering about his character, because there's a moment at the end where I'm kind of like, Dolph, you purposely set this shark loose into a lake. You deserve prison time for this. And the film kind of at the end tries to be like, oh no, but I mean, I don't know. I assumed it was intentional. He purposely did that so that he wouldn't get as much jail time. Okay, and so he got rid of the evidence, if you will, and threw it in the lake. But maybe it was accidental.
The film works the same either way. I just was finding myself thinking it was probably, an accident. I don't know how he would even know that the shark would survive in a lake. It would never occur to me that it might.
Luckily, we get another throwaway character who comes into the film later to provide some exposition. So, which we'll get to in a minute. But if we go back to the scene at at Dolph's house, okay. So we see this scene. This is interesting here. There's so many scenes in this film that almost feel like filler. Okay, they almost feel like scenes that were just kind of thrown in just to kind of meet that 90-minute runtime, if you will. But so what happens is, it's interesting here the way they shoot this. So Clint arrives home. Okay, he has.
This is the same house. This was the same house he lived in. It was the same house. It was like untouched. It was clean. The government hadn't seized his property. It was odd to me. I wasn't sure if more time had passed or what. But yeah, he came back in his nice truck to his nice house, and I was blown away that he just was his life. He picked it right back up where he left off. It was cleaner than he left it.
And he's carrying a giant Rambo knife. Like, it's like a huge Rambo knife that he's carrying. And so you're kind of thinking, okay, like, he means business with that. And then he's also carrying a small little brown package with him. And so we find out that this package is a small skirt steak, basically. Okay. And so we see Dolph, he's throwing it on the skillet, I guess you could say, on his stovetop, okay? And he doesn't even have utensils or anything. He's planning on eating it with that giant knife. And so I guess some goons have arrived. These are some goons who apparently work for the Tahoe mob, I guess we could say,
the Dawn,
right? Yeah, the Dawn. They've arrived to hassle Clint into delivering the shark and or returning the money that he got for him, that he got for smuggling the shark, obviously. And Dolph he beats their asses. I mean, he quickly just dispatches of them, kicks them out of his house, and then the camera then lingers on him cutting his steak and eating it with that knife.
He sure did. He just went in on that steak.
Perfect. I'm starving. At least you could tell us what's on the menu.
Russell, you got 30 seconds to get out of my house.
Don needs to see you. Time to get back to work, buddy.
I don't work for him anymore.
Well, he doesn't agree, and not all opinions are created equal. Look, here what we're going to do. We're going to go for a little ride, see Don, and you two can figure out the details.
30 seconds, you're up.
Make this easy. We don't like to hurt old timers.
You're not gonna shoot me. We both know that I will shoot you. We'll get up.
I should probably mention the Mafia boss is played by friend of Lundgren's and friend of the show, James Chalk. Back in the early episodes of the show, I had the pleasure of speaking with James Chalk. So, Kevin, if you feel the need to go back through any of Dolph's films in this direct-to-video era, you're going to see Mr. James Chalk pop up in quite a few roles because Dolph usually hooks his buddy up.
That's amazing. Well, I could tell they were giving him special treatment on screen, like that. I had to look him up because I thought maybe it was just a cameo. So I looked him up and I was like, nope, I don't know any of these titles. But okay, it makes sense that it was a friend of our star.
And, okay, so if we progress through the plot, okay, Hernandez, she teams up with a graduate student. I think he's a graduate student, right? He's working on a thesis. Is that right? Is that why he's in the town?
Well,
he's studying.
He said he was a teacher at the University of Rhode Island. I don't know if that makes him a doctor or... No, he did say he had a PhD.
Okay,
but maybe he was just lying because he was much more concerned with getting in Meredith's pants than he was in studying any sort of trout activity or whatever, the salmon.
Oh my God, the banter between the two of them is excruciating. So, if you really break it down, this is what these are the two main characters of the film, and these are the two who should be, the film should be circling around. And so, whenever Dolph shows up on screen, it just feels weird. I think that's the one thing that I keep coming back to is you watch. This film, in a lot of ways, I don't know if you picked up on it, but it felt in some ways like a made-for-TV movie. You know what I mean? Or maybe
it was like a Hallmark or Sci-Fi Channel or that sort of thing.
Yeah, or maybe like one of those shows that would be on like the CW or something like that. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so it just feels weird when Dolph's on screen. But yeah, so basically Hernandez teams up with him, and he's only in the film for two reasons. Okay, I don't know if you picked up on this. He's in the film for two reasons. Number one, he's there to give the Hernandez character a love interest so that we can hope by the conclusion of the film, when the movie ends, that Hernandez and this guy will form like a mother-father relationship to Dolph's daughter, I guess. But he's also there to provide the necessary exposition because he seems to know everything in this movie about both bears and sharks. Okay? Because when people start getting... When people start getting attacked by the shark that's in the water, they initially all think that it's a bear attack. Okay, and so he knows everything about both types of animals, I guess we can say. Or a shark isn't an animal, I guess, right? But he knows everything about both killers.
Sure. Yeah, his character. It was like, if you thought what was missing from Jaws was that you wished that Brody and Hooper were hooking up, like that's what you're going to get in this movie.
And we also get, I want to get your take real quick, because another character gets introduced midway through. He's a smarmy British reality show host. What were your thoughts on the inclusion of this particular character?
Well, so there's a stretch of this movie, and this scene I think was part of it, where there was like maybe 7 or 8 scenes in a row that had just direct parallels to the movie Jaws. And this dude there was a character just like this guy in Jaws 3, where the one that was set in like a SeaWorld type setting, where there was just this Jacques Cousteau, like oceanographic celebrity person there whose job it was to just be British and sort of annoying. And I don't know what the purpose of his character was, other than to give us a sense of joy when he finally got eaten.
Well, that was my big issue with that as well. Okay, because this is the problem with this character is that he's pretty much the Ellis. Okay, any fan of action movies knows Ellis from Die Hard, right? I think a lot of these movies you always have that smarmy, cocky dude who thinks that he can stand toe to toe with the villain of the movie, and you just know that not only is he going to be killed, but you almost want to see him get killed. Okay, Ellis is the classic example from Die Hard. But I was talking about this with a buddy the other day. In the movie Daylight, you had I'm sure you've seen the movie Daylight. Sylvester Stallone.
I have, yeah, yep.
Okay, do you remember Viggo Mortensen's character in that film? He thinks that he's going to be able to climb out of the tunnel, and you just know as soon as he's throwing on his climbing gear, you know that he's going to get smacked by the water or the rubble or whatever it may be. And so when you see this British reality show host come in, because basically he arrives in the film, he's promising the town that he's going to capture the shark, but he's also asking that they allow him to film him catching the shark for an upcoming episode of his reality show. What's interesting is his reality show is never named.
I'm sorry, I think he said it was called Fish Fried on BBC.
Oh, I missed that. Oh, I missed it.
And I was just like,
okay,
what? There's no way BBC is letting this guy on camera. He's too obnoxious.
Well, and he's hitting on. There's that scene where he's interviewing one of the locals, and he's hitting on her. And so you watch. He comes on screen, and you see him doing these things, and you're thinking to yourself, "Oh man, I cannot wait to see this dude just get torn limb from limb by this shark." Unfortunately, I mean, I guess we can say it's spoiler. Okay, he is killed, he is eaten, but man, is his death a letdown? Yes. Well, the movie didn't have the special effects budget, I suppose, to do these deaths justice. There was one moment I wanted to pinpoint in the scene you were just talking about, where he was talking with like the local girl, and I don't know if it's either the best bit of writing to me in the whole movie, or it was an accident that they just let into the final picture. But she says, like, "I'm here for a bachelorette party." And I was like, did she say that wrong on purpose, or was that an accident? Like, if it was written to be bachelorette instead of bachelorette, then I think that's amazing. Or it was, a product of just how speedy the production was, that they're just like, that's close enough, and we're moving on. Well, that character, we see her earlier in the film. I mean, one thing that we haven't discussed, but apparently this unnamed lake, because I don't think they ever do name the lake, do they? I guess for all intents and purposes, it's just Shark Lake. I feel like they said the town was called Alpine Lake. Oh, it is Alpine Lake. Damn it. Man, Kevin, you got this one better than I did. I watched it 3 times in the last 48 hours, so it's all locked in. Man, your dedication. Thank you, your dedication. But yeah, I mean, one thing we can say, I mean, I guess I'm going to go back to you, because I think you're more of an expert on this than I am. Is Lake Tahoe an area where there's like a lot of parties, like college parties and things like that? Like, will people go there just to party? Because in this film, it does not, in its 85-minute runtime, it does not shy away. There are at least 3-4 scenes maybe where we see some parties and the camera is ogling at girls in bikinis and whatnot, right? I mean, is Tahoe, does this kind of thing happen there? Okay, so I guess it's being true, I don't think true to form in that sense. Well, I wasn't there in like the peak of summer, but yes, I think it is. It's pretty amazing because it's like a town where, you can, there's beach parties, there's jet skiing, there's water skiing, all of the fun that I guess rich kids would like to have, but you totally nailed it, because a large chunk of this movie is like Burning Man or something, where the right. Kids are just shaking their booties on the beach or whatever. And I'm like, what time of year is this movie happening? Because half the movie are characters wearing heavy jackets and all that, and then the other half is like girls in bikinis on the beach. You're right. Well, the only reason I brought that up is because, the gal who the reality show host is interviewing, we see her earlier in the film because she and one of these college guys go out into the middle of the lake to start being amorous, we can say, and then he is eaten by the shark, and then she seems to be just fine when she's being interviewed. I mean, because that was the same actress. I did not notice that at all, but yeah, that was the beginning of the chunk of the movie that was just a direct translation from Jaws, where it was like, oh, this is the scene, this is the open from Jaws, where the two young lovers like sneak away from the party, and someone gets eaten by the shark. Yeah. I mean, and I guess, we can't shy away from it. The death scenes in this movie, I guess you shouldn't say, we can't really say death scenes entirely, but I guess the maiming scenes in this movie, I don't know. I wonder, I go back and forth on this. Do you think they were intended to be silly and ridiculous, or are they trying to play these off as serious? There's the scene where the old couple is going out. Okay, do you remember this? Where the old couple is And the guy, he's wearing a hat that says retired, and he even mentions that he's retired. So in case you didn't know, he's a retiree. But he falls in the lake, and there's the scene where his wife freaks out, and she sees him face down in the lake, and then as soon as she rolls him over, we see that his arm has been eaten off or whatever. Yeah. It's just... Yeah.
I felt like, those characters were so sort of obnoxious, that I guess the idea was maybe they'd make it where the viewer wanted these people to get eaten. Because, I felt like as I was watching, that death came not a moment too soon because I was already tired of seeing these characters.
Well, and there's another scene, too, which this is one that you can find online, actually. If you just search the film, you'll find images for it online. I busted up laughing. So there's a scene where these two gals are parasailing. And,
yes. Yep.
and the shark just bites one of these gals' feet off. And so you see her, jump up from the water, and she's like screaming, and you just see this sad, like digital blood squirting off her stump of a leg. I mean, and it's a hilarious edit too, because you see the sheriff. He sees this, and as soon as she starts screaming, you just hear him. He goes, "Oh shit!" And it's just such a funny edit.
I do want to commend the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources for their quick apprehension of a black bear. It is a male, approximately 500 pounds. And now the people in Nevada don't have to worry anymore about being harmed.
How big was the bear?
500 pounds.
Black. Get out of the water!
We got him. It's under control.
No, it's not. Get him out now!
Hernandez!
Get him out!
It was great. Yeah, I snipped a clip of the video off to send to John, who I do 6 Degrees of Schwarzenegger with, just to show it to him, because I'm like, this is crazy. And his reaction was like, wait, is this movie just Jaws at the lake? And I was like, I'm sure that was like the premise, right? Because that was like, that whole scene was just their version of like, we've got a panic on our hands on the 4th of July or whatever it was from Jaws.
I mean, again, that's what I would say. That's what this movie is. This is Jaws at Lake Tahoe that, for some reason, inexplicably stars Dolph Lundgren, of all people. That's,
yes.
I think, the best way to describe that. The one thing that really stood out to me the first time I watched it, and of course it stood out to me again, is the other thing that I think is problematic with this film are the underwater sequences. Okay, so what's interesting is, we're told that this is a bull shark. Okay, a bull shark. I mean, that is a huge, shark right there. Okay, so, but what's interesting is every time you see these underwater sequences, it's like maybe 3 feet of water. I mean, did you notice this? Like, you can see the bottom of the water. I mean, and if you go to any shark movie, I think, in my opinion at least, I think one of the aspects about shark movies that are that's appealing, in my opinion, and almost frightening, is the fact that it's the deep blue sea of it all, right? It's the fact that, these sharks exist in this world that is almost endless, that where you'll never be able to see the bottom of the ocean, if you will. Yet every time it's underwater and you see from like the shark's POV, you're going to look at this through a realistic lens. It's kind of like, well, the shark would be realistically beached, right? If it was traveling through 3 feet of water, wouldn't it?
I was glad you pointed that out to me as I was just getting into the film, because I don't know if I would have noticed, but yeah, after you pointed it out, it was sort of like you couldn't help but notice that, as you said, there's people getting attacked and eaten in like knee-deep water, and I don't know that any shark that could really hurt a person could also swim in water that's that shallow. Well, I also thought, if these sharks have been around out here for 5 years, like, how is it that they're only just now starting to eat people? I feel like there should have been years of shark attacks happening.
Well, spoiler, I guess it turns out that there's, 3 of these things? There's
the mama and the babies, I guess.
Right.
It stands to reason there could be a lot more, unless the mom only gave birth to 2 other females, I guess. Which maybe that's the way it was, but that's getting too deep into it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and the other thing that really stood out to me is, again, there are so many inert. That's the best way I can describe it. There are just so many inert and pointlessly edited scenes in this film. There's one scene, I actually, in a weird way, I had to rewind it because I was like, what was the point of this? Okay, there is a scene where Hernandez is just walking down the police hallway. Okay, there is a scene right when she finds it's like a harpoon bullet, if you will. And so there is a scene where it shows her enter the door of the police station, walk down the hallway of the police station, and then exit. And it's like, what was the point of this? There are also 2 scenes, okay, not just one, but there are 2 scenes of Dolph's Clint character loading up his truck with equipment to go catch the shark. Okay, and I'm just kind of like, what? Yeah,
he was doing that all day.
He was doing that all day.
It was like 12 hours of him loading the truck.
He's loading the truck, and all he's loading it with, at least from what I saw, was a couple nets. And it's like, how are you going to catch
a couple of fishing nets,
a shark with
maybe a harpoon gun and a bucket?
Yeah.
What about the redneck hunters that they had, the bear hunters that were talking about? We're learning all about the hunters, like domestic problems with his girlfriend or something like that before they killed the black bear or caught the black bear or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's oh my goodness. Yeah, I mean, there's just so many scenes like that where it's kind of like, man, were they padding this out so that it can hit that 90 minutes, or were they just figuring like, we got this is B-roll footage of Dolph here that let's throw it in so that we can maximize his screen time in this film.
You need to have Dolph on screen at least once every 5 minutes.
Well, and it's not even 5 minutes. There are, again, he's in this film about 20 minutes, so there are stretches of this film where he's barely there. I mean, where he's not even really there. I mean, let me get your opinion real quick, because again, okay, this is Dolph Lundgren versus a shark. Okay, if you look on that Amazon interface screen, okay, that is the premise that's being sold. I'll go to your opinion first. What are your thoughts on Dolph's final fight with the shark? Because I think that's what, okay, again, if you have Dolph, I'm just trying to think about this. If I'm the director, if I'm the producer of this film, whatever, okay, I have Dolph Lundgren on screen, okay, and he's willing to get in the water, okay, and wrestle a dumb shark, then I'm going to try my damnedest to make that look cool. What were your thoughts? Did it live up to those expectations?
Well, so my first thought watching was like, wow, 2015 Dolph Lundgren was still in like pretty remarkably great physical shape. But also,
yes, yeah,
the shark came at Clint, although it didn't seem particularly interested in biting him. It was just sort of bumping into him. And although it was just also so dark, it was hard to tell what was happening. But yeah, then it latched onto his shoulder and he's punching at the thing. But yeah, it wasn't as epic as I guess you would hope for in a movie where you're promised, Dolph versus shark.
I can only imagine that day on set. I mean, that's the only thing I was thinking, is I wonder if it was as ridiculous as... Did you ever see Ed Wood with Johnny Depp?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, do you remember the scene where they're filming late at night with Bela Lugosi and he has the octopus that isn't hooked up to a motor and he just has to sit in the water with it? And I can only imagine.
I'm sure, yeah. I figure Dolph was probably in a pool or a hot tub or something, sort of just wrestling with like some rubber upper half of a shark or something that they had for the movie.
Yeah, that's what the budget would allow. Well, if we look at the ending of this film real quick, okay, they are able to kill all of the sharks. Okay, I guess it turns out where Dolph, because I mean we kind of glossed over it, but Dolph, the reason why he's fighting the shark is because he jumps in the water to rescue Carly, because Carly somehow fell into the water. The way she falls in was interesting to me.
It was fully ridiculous. She was like safe under the deck, like in the cabin or whatever, and then the shark attacked the boat, and he's like, go rescue Carly. So they bring her up to the top deck, and then she gets knocked overboard. And it's like, boy, she was truly safe and sound before you brought her up. But yes, she got knocked like 50 feet away from the boat somehow.
We should probably say, too, that the shark is able to bite a hole in the boat, and we get some hilarious CGI of water falling into the boat.
Oh, that was bad.
I don't know if you noticed the CGI.
No, it was bad. You nailed it. It was bad. That was the Don's boat. We should also say it was the Don's boat. He's like, here, take my boat and go get the shark. I'm like, dude, I promise you buying a bull shark is a lot cheaper than buying a new boat.
Yeah. And doesn't he give him like a day? He says, you have 1 day to get my shark, which I'm thinking to myself, like, damn.
Bring me my shark.
200 square miles of lake.
That made me curious. So I was like, I feel like you could get a bull shark pretty easily. I don't know what it would cost, but I looked online and you can buy a bull shark on the internet. Like, if you really want a bull shark. He's been waiting for 5 years for Dolph, for Clint, whatever, to get out of jail to retrieve his shark from the lake. You owe me one shark.
Yeah. Well, I guess if we jump to the end real quick, the Don is able to get arrested. He is arrested, and Clint and Hernandez, they are able to make up. Okay, where Clint thanks her for taking care of Carly. These are his words. He says, you were a mom and you took care of Carly when no one else would. And I guess this is all able to excuse and absolve Dolph of his crimes, okay, because I guess Hernandez, she gives him the opportunity to leave, to run. And he says, no, I'm tired of running. Yeah. I'm going to stick around. And we see him at the end of the movie, again, through one of those awesome aerial shots. He is driving away in his truck. So I guess the police are disregarding the fact that he was the one who put the shark in the first place. I mean, on purpose or if it was accidental. Regardless, I think we can agree it was his fault that the shark was in the lake in the first place, right?
And I was also more bothered. I was more bothered by like the deputy that showed up at his house. And he assaulted him and threw him off the boat, and we never saw that deputy again. That's right. So I was thinking he killed one of the deputies, and they're still gonna like let him off with a slap on the wrist.
Yeah, but you know what? He's absolved of these crimes because he did the selfless act of saving a little girl who just so happens to be his daughter. So that's a little. I mean, it's not like it's just some random citizen. It's his own kid. So
his character makes bad decisions, I felt like, throughout, as far as, we should say he didn't really kidnap the girl. The girl, Carly, snuck away from her house and came to see him. But then as soon as he realizes that she's there, he like assaults a police officer and speeds away with the girl on the boat. And I'm like, well, now you've kidnapped her. Like, so now you've got problems,
right,
Clint.
Well, I mean, we've glossed over the film, okay? I mean, some of them really think this is a film that needs a full-on, scene-by-scene, 6 Degrees of Schwarzenegger, 4-episode analysis of. But, Kevin, I always like to close it out, and I like to do 2 recommends, okay? So one as a film in general, and one as a Dolph Lundgren film. I can probably guess where you're going to go with this one as a film in general, is just regular Saturday night viewing. But I guess, what do you think? Does this film get a recommend? Did you enjoy it on any kind of level, whether it be a silly level, whether it be a because I know you mentioned that you liked The Punisher and you liked Universal Soldier. Was this one? Did you find enjoyment, I guess I should say, in viewing this film?
I don't want to be like the Debbie Downer, but I feel like with this silly of a premise, I would have expected the movie to be more fun. And I think if it had leaned into like the ridiculousness of everything about it, then it could reach a recommend. But for me, I would probably say not. I'm sorry to say. Apologies to Mr. Lundgren.
Oh. Okay, so you're not planning on going and watching this again for number 4. I'm assuming. Is that right?
No, I hate to say it. I would love to be able to recommend this, break this out at Bad Movie Night with the boys or whatever like that. But but no, I think I'll probably forego it for future viewings.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, I really do appreciate you coming on and chatting this silly low budget movie with me. But for my recommend, look, I'm right there with you as well. It's interesting. I used to think that the Agent Red. Okay, I don't know if you've seen any of if you've listened to any of my previous episodes, but Agent Red, that's always kind of the one from 2001 that we target as being the worst of the worst. But I always used to think that one and the Giorgio Serafini trio of films that he did in 2014 were the worst. But I have to say, I'm sorry to say this, but I think this could be one of the lowest, if not one of the worst films Dolph has ever done. At least in those previous films, Dolph was able to fire a gun in some kind of way. Here, he really doesn't even do that. When you watch this film, for the few scenes that he's on screen, he's clearly bored. He doesn't want to be there. And I'm not saying that an actor is not allowed to step out of their comfort zone and deliver something in a different genre. Okay, I think that's noble when any actor tries that. But I would say at least try to have fun with it at the very least. And with Shark Lake, it's one of the big issues with it is it's taken itself way too seriously to be enjoyable and entertaining. And it's not silly enough to enjoy for a pizza plus beer movie-going experience either. Dolph, like we keep saying, is barely in the film. And without him, there's just not much else of note with this particular film. I imagine that the film... I guess in the end for Dolph, okay, I imagine that the film did its job in helping Dolph make some car payments, if you will.
Sure.
But you can't tell me that this is something that he looks back on and remembers fondly. I would argue that I bet he doesn't even remember making this particular movie. That's how much of a small blip it was.
How many in his prime, how many movies was he cranking out in a year?
So that's what's fascinating. If you look at a lot of these action guys, okay, back in his prime, this is the same thing with Steven Seagal, Van Damme, Jean-Claude Van Damme. I've been saying this on the show, but Jean-Claude Van Damme is kind of essentially in this retirement, because I think Van Damme is of the opinion, like, look, if he really wanted to keep working, these are the type of productions that he would be getting. And I think Van Damme kind of views them as being a little beneath him. So, who can blame him? But in his prime, Dolph, alongside Arnold and Stallone and all those guys, was making about one movie a year. And sometimes that one movie a year that he did was enough to set him financially to where he could take the next year off. But what's really, really interesting is since these films have started getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, he's doing as many as 5 or 6 films a year. And it's just really fascinating watching. I know Bruce Willis, say what you will about Bruce Willis, but it's kind of the same MO with all of those films that what has he cranked out, like 25 films in the past 5 years or so?
And I feel like his situation seems like it's probably based on his health issues, but
right.
But it's a quick payday, an easy payday. You don't have to work too hard. Don't have to spend too much time away from your family or whatever you've got going in your personal life, I assume.
Well, and these films, we've talked about this on the show as well, but back in his prime, okay, when he was doing direct-to-video films, you still had Blockbuster, okay? You still had Hollywood Video, where these films, even though they were direct-to-video, they could still make a little bit money on rentals and sales and whatnot, okay? Nowadays, these films, they're not even really being made for Netflix anymore. At least if a film is being made for Netflix, people are paying a subscription fee in order to watch it. But a film like Shark Lake, like you said earlier, it's on every free streaming app available. Okay, and so when people can view your film for free without having to pay anything, then of course it's going to be cheaply made. Let's just be honest. That's the way it is.
No, absolutely. I feel like I feel it gives me a little hint of sadness, although I'm sure that Dolph has like a great vacation home and a nice boat and everything like that. But you see him in something where he's really putting forth the effort, like he did in Creed 2. And man, he can still bring it. Like he can deliver the goods. I feel like when he's invested in doing a good job. And then it's sort of sad to watch him in a movie like this, where as you said, he was just disinterested in the whole thing.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. I mean, you can tell that he still has the fire. He still brings the thunder, if you will. And so, yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, I think everybody would agree. Everybody who has talked about Creed 3 always praises his performance because, he has that ability. And then you watch something like this, and you're kind of like, what are you doing here? You know what I mean? Like this is beneath you. You know what I mean?
It's like that boat isn't going to buy itself, I guess.
No. So, Kevin, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for. Man, you really took a bullet for this one. Thank you very, very much. I guess this is some bragging rights to you, right? You can go back, you can talk to your co-host, and you can say, I had the pleasure of sitting in and talking about one of Dolph's worst movies. So,
absolutely. I wear it as a badge of honor. I appreciate the opportunity to come on, and I hope you keep doing what you're doing. The world is a better place for having a Dolph Lundgren podcast in it.
Well, your podcast as well. Okay, I don't want to let that go. I want to give you the opportunity to plug what it is you do. Again, you are one of the co-hosts of Six Degrees of Schwarzenegger. Where can we find you?
It's basically we're very seldomly active on social media, on Instagram and Twitter, but you can find us, I think, on any of the major podcast platforms. We're also a part of the Last of the Action Heroes podcast network, along with this show that you're listening to. I Must Break This podcast. But we also have our own feed where you might find some older golden nuggets of episodes that we haven't managed to get loaded onto the podcast network yet, but we are working on that. But if you like these type of movies, I would say, like the golden age of guts and glory and everything like that, check out 6 Degrees of Schwarzenegger. You'll find a little Dolph Lundgren coverage there, as well as all the others, the Wesley Snipes and Van Dammes and Stallones and Schwarzeneggers of the world.
Right on. Are you at liberty to give us a little bit of intel on, let's see, again, as of this recording, you guys are doing Cyborg. What other films are on the horizon?
I think coming up next, we're going to do, this is an exclusive for your podcast, we're going to do Conan the Destroyer. And then I want to say, I really want to do Speed or maybe Bad Boys. But we'll always, if you're a Schwarzenegger fan, as I'm sure most Dolph Lundgren fans are, we always come back around to Schwarzenegger. We're trying to ration those out a little bit so we don't just burn through his catalog too quickly. But I think next up is going to be Conan the Destroyer. I'm excited to talk about it because it's one of the more weird and fantastical Arnold Schwarzenegger movies.
Excellent. Well, Kevin, again, I'd love to have you back on, man. So I'm kind of coming to the end, but there are still a few films coming out. So I'd love to have you back on if you're willing. So thank you.
Absolutely. And I know I really want to talk about Universal Soldier for sure on ours. So when we get to one of these other Dolph Lundgren movies that we haven't done yet, I'll be in touch and hopefully you'll grace us with your presence on 6 Degrees of Schwarzenegger. Oh,
that would be amazing. Plan on it. To everyone out there who is listening, please feel free to rate and review the show on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever else you go to subscribe. We always appreciate the reviews, and we'll see you all next time on I Must Break This podcast.